Good afternoon, and welcome to the Voice of Wisdom. With over 60 years of experience as an investment banker, entrepreneur, investment analyst, economist, and venture capitalist, Morty Davis is Wall Street and capitalism personified. The over 400 companies for which he has raised more than $3 billion over the years have created a countless number of jobs and exciting new products. Through the Voice of Wisdom, Mr. Davis explores, analyzes, and debates the most topical political, economic, and social issues facing our world today. Joining Mr. Davis today for a discussion on guns and gun violence is Rabbi David Seidemann, a brilliant scholar with a legal background in religion, philosophy, and law. And now, Mr. Davis and Rabbi Seidemann.
Welcome back. It's so great to be with you. It's 6:30 Wednesday again. Time flies. And I really appreciate my treasured listeners. You are really phenomenal. You send me so many interesting queries, and I get so much inside knowledge from you all. I think there's a famous truism: you learn more from your students than you do from your peers and so forth. So I appreciate you. Keep on keeping on going and sending me your queries and your insights. I really appreciate it. Today we're going to have a discussion, even though we've done this before. It's so crucial. It's so vital in my mind. It's really, I feel like we're uncivilized. The United States is the most, by far, of all the developed countries, has the most mass assaults, mass slaughters, whatever you want to call it. It's a mass slaughter is considered at least 4 people being shot, other than the 4 people being hit by bullets, other than the perpetrator, other than the shooter. And we've had, so far this year, it's unbelievable, 311. That means it's almost 2 a month. By the end of this month, 6 months, there's 180 days in 6 months, and we were up to 311 last week, so we'll probably wind up with 330. Over this last weekend, Juneteenth, it was called. In Chicago, there were 4 shootings, and I think about 20 people were killed over the weekend at least. And I don't know how we live with it. I don't know how we allow it. Unless, I guess it'll take one of the congressmen or one of the congressmen's families to suffer this kind of event before they even approach it, because they're also frightened by the NRA. The NRA is, all of us have issues. We all care about different things, employment, income, but the NRA is targeted. They have one issue, because they make a lot of money selling guns, especially assault weapons. They make the most money selling assault weapons. Assault weapons are these rifles, long arms, that have the ability to, that they were made for war, for fighting, for killing as many soldiers on the other side as fast as you can. And so they shoot about 100 bullets in a minute, give or take. I'm not sure if it's 100 or it's 70 or more than 100, but it's outrageous. Nobody needs that. A hunter doesn't need that. No civilian needs it. Why we make it available is outrageous. And it's all because of the gun lobby and the powerful influence they have in Washington. They're one of the biggest contributors to politicians, to our political leaders, to Congress, to the president. And we have to somehow, over 70% of Americans and it might even be closer to 80% of Americans are for additional gun control and doing away with these assault weapons to individuals. I can't understand for the life of me why we are the most uncivilized nation in the world with regard to guns, because there's no other country, advanced country, developed country, that comes near us. We're the leaders by far. I wish we were the leaders in other good things, the way we are the leaders of this, and we can't get anything done. They passed something about a year ago, that Biden is proud of. It's called red flag. Of course, the NRA is endorsing that because it has nothing to do with selling guns. It really is a way to what's the word, to reprogram people, or to set the issue aside. They're in favor of it, because the red flag was, it's true that many of these assaults of children in schools, of people in their prayer facilities, infrastructure, and restaurants, and playing fields, all over. So many of them are executed. That's a good word to use. Executed, are implemented by mental cases. But there's a lot that are really just hate crimes, where they're Nazis, or they're Ku Klux Klan, and so I wish you'd explain to me why we're the only country in the world. Len, when you get a chance, look it up. Where they have a list of the countries of the nations, and the number of slaughters. I think Japan has maybe 5 a year. Australia, New Zealand, England, all of those countries once had mass slaughters, and they dealt with it right away, and they no longer have that. It doesn't even get to first base. It hardly makes an impression.
Yeah, so the United States had over 100, if I'm reading correctly, and the next closest country was Russia with 21.
Where do you see the numbers? I don't see
Right
it.
over here, Morty. 101 for the United States.
Yeah.
21 for Russia. And then you go down to France, Germany, Canada only had 4, Finland 3, Belgium 2, and the Czech Republic 2, Italy 2. Wow. Right, we have a lot to be embarrassed about and a lot to be afraid about. I will tell you this, though. Mexico...
I don't know why they have the United States so small.
Because we data, it was probably a few months ago.
A few years ago, man.
Months. This is 2023. It's just the first few months.
Yeah.
Oh, the first few months.
Yeah. It's interesting, though, because Mexico has one of the toughest gun laws on the books in the world, and yet they have one of the highest murder rates. So,
what's Mexico?
I'm not talking about mass shootings. I'm talking about just murder rate in Mexico.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of drug cartels. There's a lot of drug dealing there. But Mexico has really tough gun laws.
Well, Chicago has tough gun laws.
Yeah.
New York has tough gun laws.
Right.
But
27 slaps on the wrist.
But they come across from New Jersey or from Connecticut or from adjacent states that don't have tough guns.
You could invoke the toughest gun laws in the world now going forward in America. You could, as of tomorrow, let's say you would have legislation that would invoke tough gun laws. You have 100 million
Yeah.
guns in
More
the
than-
United States
right.
now.
More
More
than-
guns than people.
Right.
Now, how are you going to get those 400 million guns off the street?
No, and especially infants and young children
Yeah.
don't have them. So it must average at least two for every
Yeah.
for every
Hey,
individual.
listen, the only good news is that the NRA, and this is a poll, Pew poll, says that 95% of all people, NRA gun holders, believe that children should be kept away from guns. Okay, great, but there's a
Yeah,
few
look,
steps before
A
that.
6-year-old shot a teacher only
Yeah, right,
2 weeks ago.
right,
It's
right.
it's outrageous.
Well, I think that the NRA does a lot of duck and cover, but the truth of the matter is, if we want to be completely honest about this, it's not. I think you're expecting me to say it's not a gun problem, it's a person problem, but I'm not going to say that. I used to think that. I used to subscribe to the theory guns don't kill, people do. But I've shifted from that because of the mass shootings and because of just a regular weekend in Chicago and a regular weekend in Philadelphia.
Even if people do kill,
Right.
they can use a bat, they could use a knife, but they can't do a mass shooting.
Right. Okay, but we have to
A mass
separate.
killing.
Right, but we have to
And also
separate
you could
mass
protect
shootings.
You could protect yourself against a bat, or maybe somebody near you could help you with the shooting. With the guns, you can't protect
Absolutely.
yourself.
But let's be honest and detail the statistic that most shootings, not the mass ones, but most of your shootings on a Saturday night or a Friday night
A domestic.
are with a simple handgun. And you're right, domestic. A woman who lives in a home where there's a gun is 500% more likely to be shot than beaten.
You think they deserve it?
I hope not.
Ju-
I don't
ju-
think so.
Justify.
But justified homicide.
homicide.
No, I don't think so. But can you imagine 500% more likely to be shot during a domestic dispute than if there was no gun in the house?
David, you got me wrong, and I don't want the listeners to get me wrong. It's okay to have a gun if you're checked out, if you're
Right.
reliable.
Agreed.
If you're trained to store it properly and to shoot it properly. It would be like letting people drive without giving them a road test and make sure they know the rules of the road. This is a dangerous weapon. You have it in your own house. If you don't know how to store it, that's why so many people. I wouldn't have it in my house
Right.
under any condition
Well,
because by accident.
A kid could get hold of it. Well, I agree with you that assault
Not only a kid, even if
Right.
your wife could pick it up and you didn't.
Right.
and
You didn't vacuum properly, and next thing you know,
Look, I worked with a guy. It was the most interesting story. His father was the biggest businessman in New Hampshire. This goes many, many years ago. His father was, his last name was Lindsay or something. And his father was like the king of the town. He defined it so much as in Ireland or Scotland or something, to have something that a guy is so big he has the right to the bride before the
right.
chassan. What's the chassan?
The groom.
The bridegroom. Before her first night, he has a first right. He said his father was that powerful in his town. And it was at the time of Lindbergh. Lindbergh's child was kidnapped and so
Right.
forth. So he was very wealthy. So he had this guy who worked with me, his son, and he had a daughter. So he hired guards with guns around the clock. In other words, every 8 hours or 12 hours, a different one came and protected the two of them. And one day, one of the guards was, one of the protectors, so-called, was cleaning his gun and shot his sister through the head and killed her.
Right.
He said his mother wound up in a mental institution. She was so destroyed by this event. And his father wound up a total alcoholic.
Right.
So guns, but I'm not against it. Look, in Australia you can still get a gun. but it takes you a year. It goes. You got to prove that you've taken lessons on how to shoot, that you know how to store it.
So let's talk about where we agree. We agree that assault weapons should be banned. Agreed?
Yes.
I agree. No reason why any
But that's the best.
law-abiding American
That's the best seller and the most
I
profitable.
know, I
and
know.
the most profitable.
should have it. But background checks, yes. The big debate is what's included in background checks. My idea is that anybody can pass a background check once. How about 2 years later, 3 years later, 4 or 5? Just like you have to go for continuing legal education and continuing medical education. So I believe
You're misunderstanding what the background check is.
No, I'm not.
Yeah,
I'm just saying
you
if
are.
anything new comes up on your record.
Oh, on your record,
If
yeah.
anything
Because
new-
all it is they call the FBI.
No, I know that.
And they after 3 days, if they don't get an answer,
I know you
they
get
can
your gun.
still they can still.
I know, but I'm
it's
saying
outrageous.
what I'm saying is if anything happens to you after you get that gun, that's a database that needs to continuously be updated. That's
Oh,
what
yeah.
I'm saying.
And
That's
it's,
my idea.
Even now, it's imperfect.
Yeah. But
Because a lot of police in small towns, the sheriffs, don't even bother to report.
Right, but what I'm saying is the following. If we got rid of every automatic rifle, every automatic weapon, we got them all. Got rid of them all. Got rid of them all.
If we got rid of every citizen,
Yeah, we wouldn't have to worry either.
Every inhabitant, there wouldn't be any.
No, but what I'm saying is you might stop these mass shootings in schools and synagogues. You're not going to stop the day-to-day shootings that go on in our major cities. And that is as big of a problem because that is affecting businesses that are moving out of the neighborhoods. Seattle, empty. Los Angeles, empty. San Francisco, empty. These businesses are closing down one after the other. They can't stay in business. So it's true, we focus on the mass shootings because it's normally kids or worshipers, and that's emotional, and we should get emotional about it, and we have to stop it. But if that's where all of the government's effort is put in, we have to get handguns off the street.
Yes, guns shouldn't be so accessible.
Right, absolutely right.
You know, if you prove you have a reason to own one, and you need it, or you're psychologically, you're so insecure, you make the case, and then you get enough training, so
Right.
you wouldn't let somebody drive a car without any prior training and preparation.
Right. I think
and
this-
the guy could say, well, I need to use the car because I had an urgent event. I had to get someplace quickly.
But he still has to know how to drive. I saw statistics, 50 out of the 70 mass shootings were done with legally purchased guns, which means that these whack jobs who got the guns
Right.
to commit them somehow escaped
I'm
the
saying
background
that
checks.
shouldn't be so
Yeah,
accessible.
I agree.
And not only that, they make a big deal. It's the second. It's in the Constitution. It's the Second Amendment.
Yeah, well,
but
let's
the
talk
Second
about that.
Amendment says a well-armed militia.
I'll read it to you. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. Now, here's the big dispute. It was a 5-4 decision in the Supreme Court in 2008. Is there a comma there or not? Because if there is, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, comma, that's one group that can have guns, a militia, or the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. So it was a 5-4
It's not
decision.
war, but there's no war.
But the majority opinion wrote, the name of the case is District of Columbia versus Heller, and it was Justice Scalia who wrote the majority opinion, and he said that the word militia is just a prefatory clause.
Yeah, well,
it's just an example of people that could have a gun.
they're finding out that the members of the Supreme Court, Scalia being one of them,
Yeah.
were funded and gifted by people who had cases before the Supreme Court.
NRA cases?
All kind of cases. But just today, a leader, the conservative,
Right.
and Thomas, that are originalists. Why would they have the extra phraseology? If everybody's entitled to have a gun, you say it. Americans are entitled to have a gun.
Well, what does it mean? What does
You
it
don't
mean?
have extra
right.
language.
So let me ask you a question. According to the dissent, and according to you, it should. Well, not according to you, because you said people could have guns. But according to the dissent, Justice Stevens, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the sentence should have ended right there. Why does it go on to say the right of the people to keep and
Because
bear
that's
arms?
the way they wrote in those days. They wrote.
Okay.
They wrote.
So that's not the way. That's not the way Justice Scalia
I
saw it.
know. Even though he's an originalist and would say, it should be. It's just like in the Torah when there's an extra word in the Bible.
Okay, but how do you read? How do you read that extra word? Is it coming to expand? Is it coming to limit?
But it's not an extra word because we're under the impression that there's no extra words. That every word has a purpose. And this is purposeless. I totally agree. A well-armed militia, because that's the way we beat the British. And also, when they say we beat the British with guns, we beat them with muskets.
Right.
That once you shot a bullet, it took about 3 minutes to reload and so forth.
And to find its mark,
These founders, who were very brilliant, hardly could anticipate the kind of guns we have today and the kind of damage.
Right. Scalia was saying that if you read this, if you interpret this to mean that only the government can have guns, what you're basically...
It doesn't say only the government.
Well, only somebody involved in protecting the state, which means the military. So what's a militia?
A militia is the citizenry that protects against the government taking over.
Okay,
the citizenry.
What?
It's like the National Guard.
Oh, okay, but it is a function of the government. They're not going against the government; they're supporting the government, right? So what Scalia was saying was, you're creating
but also the way
they're commissioned by the government, correct?
No, but the way we set this up was because we just overthrew. We were controlled by Great Britain, and they taxed us. So we wanted to have the
ability to defend against a tyrannical government.
Right.
So what?
The population.
Right.
But,
so what's
but there's a big difference.
Yeah.
In those days, the people could fight the government.
Right.
Today they can't fight the government because the government has tanks and planes and bombs and everything.
But did you in Scalia's decision, he said, and again, I'm not saying that I agree with this because I think that you're more correct that the facts on the ground changed. That we don't fight the government now. But what Scalia was saying was if a militia has the right to bear arms to fight the British, who were a tyrannical government, not to allow citizens of the United States to bear arms that might have to do battle against our own tyrannical government one day would defeat the purpose of the Constitution. Was he advocating inciting riots and rebellion and resurrection against the United States government? No, but read his decision.
Look,
that's what he was inferring.
We had such enormous respect for the Supreme Court.
Right.
We think they're beyond, they don't even have ethics rules. It turns out that Scalia, who he's looked up to as one of the great Supreme Court justices, and Thomas, and today Alito took a flight and went on a trip with a billionaire, a hunting trip and so forth. They didn't even report it. Now they're reporting everything. So,
all right, but
so I'd have more respect for their decisions if I knew that it was uninfluenced and uncorrupted. So now I see that, you can buy them too. So Congress is right now looking into creating, and not only that, but every other federal judge has rules about that, and the Supreme Court doesn't.
Okay, then you have to get into the specifics and into the weeds and see if there was ever a case
their decisions may be tarnished.
Could be
by this kind of outside influence. The NRA is the biggest contributor, one of the biggest biggest lobbyists of anybody in Washington, and have the most power, certainly because even Democrats who are in favor of gun control won't bring up gun control because they know they will be targeted with big money and probably be, what's the word? Primary.
Okay, well, I'm going to go back to the decision because Justice Stevens had a very, in my mind, a very confusing take on this. Justice Stevens wrote in his decision that, yes, you've got to read militia, and you've got to read that phrase, the regulated militia, and you also have to read the sentence, the right of the people to bear arms. But Justice Stevens said, John Paul Stevens says, that means the people within the militia. Well, I find that difficult. I find that difficult to swallow because if the word militia didn't mean the people in the militia.
What did if they had the right of the people to bear arms? Why did you have to preface it with the militia?
That's a good question.
The right of the people is all the people. That's what I'm saying.
So that's why I'm saying it's either. That's what Scalia was saying. It's both.
No, Scalia is wrong.
Well, Scalia is wrong. I think Scalia is right. John Paul Stevens said that it gives an individual the right to join a militia, but it doesn't give the individual the right to use it for self-defense.
That's what
John Paul Stevens said. I'm reading it. In dissent,
I want to ask you something.
Yes, sir. I love you, by the way.
You'll get over it. The right of the people to bear arms doesn't need anything more. That it doesn't have to say, because clearly that includes the militia. So why add that phrase?
So Scalia explained.
Yeah, what did it
Scalia explained it because, as you alluded to before, they were writing for what was going on historically back then. They had just finished battling.
So you say the right of the people to bear arms.
The
militia, the militia is the people also. So once you give that, everybody has a right to bear arms. You don't have to add the right of militia. I just wanted to explain to the audience that rabbi, lawyer, brilliant co-host of mine, coincidentally, he teaches a college course. He's a professor, and today his course was on gun control. He has a piece here that has two sides: the pro gun control and the
15 arguments,
and the
pro
and the anti-gun control.
Yeah.
So he's really. I didn't know he was doing that today at his
coincidental,
class, and it was coincidental because I didn't invite him till this afternoon. Fortunately, he was available because he's a great guy and a great guest.
Yeah. So let me ask you a question. According to Justice Stevens and Ruth Bader Ginsburg and Breyer and Souter, they don't endorse the ability for an American to keep a gun for self-defense. Well, let me rephrase that. They say that that's not a right guaranteed by the Constitution. So they're limiting the word militia to a organized group, but not, in defense of the country, but not for self-defense. Do you have a problem with that?
No, I agree with them.
You don't think people should have guns for self-defense?
No, it doesn't exclude that. There's a well-organized should have.
But I'm asking you on another point. It's not me, but somebody once said, and I'm going to find out who said it, the best way to stop a bad guy with a gun is with a good guy with a gun.
That's the
NRA? That's the NRA? Okay, I saw the quote somewhere, I didn't remember.
That is such bull, because there was a shooting in Colorado in a movie theater.
Right.
And the perpetrator was shooting people, and it was a mass shooting.
Right.
And the NRA said if everybody in the theater had a gun, if people would had a gun, best way to stop that guy
is somebody else with a gun.
You know how many people would have got? More people would have got. First of all, even the police who are trained,
they tell you not to.
No, they rarely hit their target.
Right.
That's number one.
You have to hit center mass and stuff.
And not only that, but you don't even know who's the shooter. You just shoot blindly.
Shooting in the dark.
Many more people would have got.
Yeah.
So how to stop somebody with a gun as a person with a gun? Yes. But if somebody came into my house, I have an argument with my son-in-law.
Right.
Because he acquired a gun. And I said...
Don't tell me who it is. I don't want to make him angry,
Anyway, he said he wants to be safe. And I said, all you're doing is raising the ante. Because once you pull a gun, you're like, I don't know if you're familiar with it. A black woman, an African-American woman, young woman, was shot in her bed a few weeks ago, a few months ago now. And how did it come about? The police shot her in her bed. So they were called for some emergency. They seemed to have opened the wrong door.
Oh, yeah.
And they announced that they were there or something. And she was in bed with her boyfriend. And when he heard them break in, he started shooting at them. And they shot back, and she got killed.
Right, they would have never shot if he didn't shoot.
You're raising the ante. So if they came into my house, if somebody would rob my house, I would be as gentle and as genial and as accommodating just to give them what they want and get out.
I'll be here at 11:30 tonight then.
No problem.
Where do you keep the safe? Now, it's true.
No,
they did studies.
I'll tell you the truth. That's why my wife never gave me the code for the safe. So
I'm telling you.
I couldn't give it to you.
Listen, I lost my credit card a while ago, and somebody found it, and they called me, and they said they wanted to bring it back. I said, no, keep it. You're charging less than my wife and children.
Costing me less.
Yeah, listen, they did studies. Most Americans would not get involved with their gun if they saw something going down. They would not. That is a statistic that was presented to the NRA. The NRA's response was, well, what do you want? More people die from heart attacks, heart disease, and diabetes and Alzheimer's than die from shootings. But this is
therefore what?
There was no therefore. It's ludicrous. It's a ludicrous argument.
You know, more people that attempt suicide, unless they use guns,
they're not successful.
90% of them.
Right. That was one of the arguments.
It's very rare that the guy puts a gun to his head and misses.
Correct. Right. Here's one of the pros. Right. More gun control means less suicide.
Right.
The problem with that is that the statistics don't bear that out, because in Lithuania, Japan, and South Korea, they have the lowest gun ownership of any country in the world, and they have the highest suicide rate.
That's not.
I know it's not correlation.
No, that's not the argument.
I know, but that's what the NRA said in response.
When they attempt to commit suicide,
they miss.
If they didn't have guns,
right.
they would be alive.
Right.
But look at the assault weapons. You know, I think I mentioned this before. Australia in '95 had a mass shooting.
Right. I think they've had 2 in their history.
I don't know how many they had, because I don't know before '95.
Yeah.
But I'm familiar with that. Instantly, they dealt with it. They bought back a lot of guns. They didn't buy back all the guns, so don't get me wrong. But to get a gun after that, you had to wait a year. You had to work through the police department, and the police department issued you a gun. Over the course of a year, they could also tell if you're a mental case or not, I assume.
Right.
So they didn't have another mass shooting till about a year or 2 ago. Now, we know what works. We know what works. That's bullshit, you know. We don't know what works. There's nothing we could do about it.
No, I'm not saying there's nothing to do, but I'm saying that...
No, we know what works.
I'm saying you have to attack it from a mental health. You have to attack it from a mental health perspective. You have to attack it from an illegal gun entering into America.
But the mental health point, it's not going to save a lot of them, because you don't identify that they're a real mental case. And there are very few mental cases that ever commit mass.
No, you always find afterwards that, you know, rarely do they say about this mental guy, this mass shooter that, oh, he was, you know, captain of the varsity basketball team, well liked. It's always he was a loner.
That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying
so it
there's
is
no way.
identifiable.
No, there's thousands and thousands and thousands of them.
That's true.
And most of them never.
And they go undetected, right?
No, they could be detected, but you don't know that. That's the way they're going to express their mental.
Yeah.
So.
Well, there's a lot of anger in America. There's a lot of anger in America. There's a lot of...
Nobody's more angry than I am, because I think it shows that we're uncivilized. We're in more wars than any country. We sell more arms. We spend all the money. The biggest part of the budget...
Department of Defense, right?
Is defense spending.
Yeah.
And it's not even defense spending. It's offense spending too, and it's outrageous. The one guy, I think I told you that I always thought Eisenhower was a terrible president because during his 8 years nothing happened. The way you're a great president, no, the way you're a great president.
You keep a lid on it.
No, like Lincoln is a great president because he dealt with the Civil War.
Right.
Roosevelt is a great president because he dealt with the Second War. Reagan is great because he dealt with the Cold War. You gotta have a major issue to become a hero, but having 8 years now, as I look back, he was the greatest president because there was no.
Kept the peace.
Yeah.
Right.
So this argument that if you have more arms and more arms and more people are going to be reluctant to attack you.
No,
doesn't
right.
work.
I agree with you 1,000%. If and you said this point before, if a man's on the subway and he pulls a gun on somebody and you give him what he wants, chances are he won't shoot you. You pull out another weapon, you pull out a gun, there's gunfire. I agree with 1,000% there. My question is, how do we have to deal with two issues: those that have guns that have mental issues, and those that have been through the criminal system before, and yet they still have access to guns. I wonder what the statistics are. How many first-time shooters are there? I mean, everybody has to have a first time, but
No, they start with the second time.
Yeah,
Most people don't want to be
you know what they
in
found
trouble,
out?
so they start with the second time.
One store after another in Manhattan is closing. You know that because of shoplifting. You know what they found out?
I thought because of Shabbos.
No, shoplifting. You know what they found out? Of the thousands of shoplifting arrests or incidents, 90% of them were done by the same 327 people.
And probably most of them
Do you
African
hear?
Americans.
It doesn't make a difference who, but do you hear what I just said? 90% of the retail theft by the same 327 people.
You gotta have the talent.
No, the point is that it's a revolving door of justice.
What do you mean? When I was a kid, my brother and I, there was a 5 and 10 at Woolworth.
Yeah.
We didn't even read. We went into the Woolworth. I went in and took a book off the shelf. He went in. We got 12 Ellery Queen books.
Right.
We never even read them.
Right. Just that.
But yeah.
Right. So there was actually a lawmaker.
No, but I'm saying that
Yeah.
a lot of kids.
There was a lawmaker in the city, on the city council, that wants to decriminalize shoplifting because it's not a crime. It's an opportunity of poverty. And since I don't have and I can't afford, therefore I'm entitled to steal. So they actually want to decriminalize.
I like that because
I'm going shopping tonight.
because we believe in equal opportunity.
Right.
So if they pass that.
Yeah, I'm going shopping tonight.
No, I could steal. I could.
Right.
Shoplift.
No, but this is the continued decay of society, of violence, and it's a disregard and a disrespect of boundaries.
And that's why I sound like I'm racist, but I have no racist. I have no animosity towards African Americans. But statistically, you have to recognize they do more of the in their own neighborhoods. They kill more of their own.
And that's what always baffled me. Listen, a cop takes an oath, and when a white cop shoots a black African American child, young adult, it's tragic. And they should speak out. There should be Black Lives Matter to speak out about that. But I just wonder if they are as vociferous and concerned when blacks are killing blacks every day. Why does it only matter when it's a white cop shooting or
it's often a black cop
or a black cop? So they're incensed. And a lot of times, not all the time, but a lot of times, the victim is somebody who was involved in some sort of suspicious or criminal activity. Okay, look at some of the recent cases. They weren't choir boys, but I think that the African American community would do a lot better if they would focus and have a lot more credibility if they would focus some of their attention, and maybe they do, and I just don't
and
know
get,
about
and
it.
get a better result.
Yeah, exactly. It would lend more credibility if they only scream. That's the interesting thing about the Jewish people. We decry anti-Semitism and we decry the Holocaust and we decry persecution, but not just of our own people. The Jews have been at the forefront
Absolutely.
of liberation for all of the oppressed. And I think that gives us a certain credibility that other minorities don't have because they're choosing not to exercise it.
It's interesting that you bring up Black Lives Matter, because the book I wanted to write, although they'd misinterpreted it, and maybe they'd come after me and my family. I want to write a book, and that some of the white, what do they call it, white superior?
Supremacists.
White supremacists would come after me too. I want to write a book. What Black Lives Matter, absolutely. But if they matter so much, God damn it, stay home with your kids. Teach them, get them ready for the world. They definitely matter. And they have the capacity. It's not that they're missing brains, because we see that we could have a president that's...
Colin Powell.
Yeah.
Colin Powell, a genius.
And the head of the military now is a...
And Ben Carson. I mean, these are people that really...
And the vice president.
Right, they weren't born into it. They made something of themselves. Yeah. It's all about opportunity.
So it's not that they don't have the capacity of the brains. They have the capacity. But if I was brought up in such a family and my mother neglected me and went out every night partying, and it's left me with my 6-year-old older brother or sister, or not at all, she wouldn't care.
Right. Well, look at the
by the time they get to first grade,
right,
kindergarten, even they're already, their life
programmed.
Their life is already
right.
The most influential period of your life, of a person's life.
Those formative years.
Few years.
Right. The statistics are undeniable.
Isn't that a good title?
Yeah, it's undeniable.
Black Lives Matter.
Children raised in one-family homes.
Right.
With children raised without a father, the statistics are undeniable as to their lack of ability to graduate high school, to go on to college, to get a degree.
I want to call on you for some of your expertise. In these trials where cops are accused of, in some cases, they're justifiably accused, but it's supposed to be beyond
a reasonable doubt.
Yeah, beyond a reasonable doubt. In the case of Floyd, who's the hero now and sort of the role model, they had expert witnesses that said, which should have produced a reasonable doubt, that they believed that he had prior conditions.
He was overweight, he had cocaine in his...
Yeah, so that should give a jury reasonable doubt. I don't know why the guy who represented the officer wouldn't point that out.
I'm sure he did. No, he did. So let me explain something to you about beyond a
and
reasonable
also
doubt.
the guy in the subway now,
right,
who said, when you're holding the guy down, you're afraid to let him up.
Right. He has a better chance of walking than the cop.
Yeah.
Yeah. Neely, I believe is his name. He has a better chance of being acquitted than the cop because the cops are held to a higher standard.
Penny.
Yeah, Penny is it, or Neely?
Neely's the victim.
Neely's the victim, right? Penny, right? He has a better chance based on what I've read about the case and heard about the case.
That's a cheap case.
What?
Maybe a nickel.
Cheap case. At least it should have been a nickel a dime.
Yeah, I hear you. But an expert and reasonable doubt is only as good or as strong as a jury wants to believe it is.
Yeah.
There are many cases, unfortunately, that are decided by, well, what happens if we don't make this decision?
Yeah,
How is Main Street going to react? If we acquit this guy, how is Main Street going to react? I'm not saying that that's what happened in the Derek Chauvin case. See, the question is like this. Can a cop restrain...
Who's Chauvin?
He's the guy who... with
Floyd?
Yeah.
His last name was Chauvin?
Yeah, Derek Chauvin. Can an officer restrain a suspect with less force than was used to subdue George Floyd? The answer in this case probably was yes. Why? Because there was, I think, 6 cops there, 9 cops there. There's a lot they could have done other than
that's easy
kneeling on
for you
his
to
neck.
say.
No. I'm saying this was the argument that
That's
was being
easy for
made.
you to
No,
say.
I'm not saying it's true. I'm saying this is the argument that
There
was
could
made.
be 6 cops, and you're worried that
I get it.
that he's a criminal or a,
Right, but
and he's going to pull a gun and
You're right. You're right.
You know,
I'm simply.
I would not be a judgment. I would not make a judgment.
No.
Like
I'm
that.
simply explaining why the guy on the subway,
Yeah.
this Marine, has a better chance of walking because he was a private citizen. He wasn't armed himself. He had no other
was
way
a
to
Marine.
subdue this. He was a Marine. He was working off of instinct. This is what they're told to do. I think he has a much better chance, unless the jury is going to be afraid of the reaction on Main Street, and then we have a problem.
I
again.
think if the victim wasn't black, there wouldn't be a problem.
Well, listen, wasn't a week later, or maybe 2 weeks later, it was on all the news channels. I saw the video myself. There was 2 African Americans that got into a fight in the middle of the street. People were walking by. One took out a knife and stabbed the other and killed him right in broad daylight. I mean, I saw it on.
Who killed who?
One African American stabbed and killed another African American. They got into some sort of fight.
Yeah.
But you don't hear a peep. There was nothing. Al Sharpton didn't come out and talk about it the next day in the National Action Network. You know, where are they to talk about how our inner city is crumbling? Our families are crumbling. They're not, again, they're 100% right to speak about.
But that wasn't racist.
I understand. But
But you're
that
right.
is just
But
as
that
much
should-
of a threat
No,
to their community.
That's something they have to correct even more,
Yeah.
because every day in their own community, so many African Americans are killing African Americans.
And it's wrong and it's terrible and it detracts from what they can contribute to society because
course.
they're phenomenal. They have so much to offer with their culture, but they're being taken away way too young. Way too young. All right, my dear friend Morty.
They're 13% of the population
And 80% of the prison population, I
don't know.
think?
How
Something
about
like that. Something like that. Am I
incarcerated.
right?
What percentage are incarcerated?
I think the question is different. What percentage, not what percentage of the 13% are incarcerated, it's what percentage of the total incarcerated population
Well,
is...
the argument is that shows that it's racist.
Right? Look, one of the arguments that the NRA made, believe it or not, is that if you have stricter gun controls, it's going to disparately impact blacks. Because if you want to take away guns from the inner city people, the people that need to protect themselves, you're going to, this was the NRA arguing this, that it's going to be racist against Africans American. So,
Yeah, but if they didn't have guns,
okay, black Americans are 13%.
of the population.
And what is that? And it says, and the percent of people in prison and jail who are black is 38%.
3 times.
So they're number one. They're leading in something. That's impressive.
1 second.
I thought it was
So it's
more
not
than that.
38% of blacks are in jail. It's 38% of
the total
population is African American.
13% of the population is black, African American, and 38% are.
Of the prison population, right?
And if you look at merit, and 13% of the African American of Americans are black, and probably 88% of the guys earning millions in the NBA are.
Well,
It goes by.
I'm trying out for the NBA. That's my next gig.
You're trying to.
I'm going to try out for the NBA. Why not?
I think you should.
Think I can make it?
You succeeded in everything else.
I'll be a very small forward.
No, you're right. There were a few small guys that made it big because the guys that couldn't find them, they were between
I'd run
their
through his legs.
Yeah, right.
Right. Anyways, Morty, we should do this more often. Not
No,
too often.
But yeah, it's amazing that you were so adequately, more than adequately prepared, so amazingly prepared.
Just give me more than 10 minutes notice next time, okay?
Yeah, no, I want you to teach the course. I'll give it to you 2 weeks in advance. Or you
Appreciate
tell
it.
me what subject you're teaching, and we'll make it that.
Well, next week is contracts. I don't think that's too exciting.
That's
Yeah,
boring.
yeah.
And lawyers are definitely too boring.
I hear you. All right. Time for dinner,
Rabbis are interesting.
aren't they? Aren't they?
Yeah.
All right. What's next?
When was the last time you heard of a rabbi, or even a priest? Religious leaders don't commit major crimes.
No,
Maybe once in a while they get involved with some woman,
but not murder.
or
Yeah.
homosexuality.
All right. We're going to say goodbye. I'm going to go home across the street and see my grandson.
Thank you so much.
Thank
are
you, Morty. You're the
super.
best.
You're the best. You're looking in the mirror when you say that. Anyway, thank you to our listeners today. Have a great week. I pray for you, for good health, for outstanding success in anything that you pursue, and for truly uplifting, fulfilling, genuine, inspiring happiness. Have a great week. God bless you.
Thank you, Morty. Everybody be well.